Hello everyone, this is Aryan Thakkar, your coach and mentor, and welcome back to my YouTube channel on Aryan Tutorials, where in this video I'll be taking up your ISC Class 12's Macbeth revision video on Act 3, Scene 6. But before I get started, I want to request you that if you haven't read through your text, then please first go read your text and then come back to this detailed and insightful revision video on the Scene 6 of Act 3. So let's get started. Now, talking about Act 3, Scene 6, this scene in particular gives us an external viewpoint of the other characters about Macbeth's tyrannical rule. Now, Macbeth's criminality has surfaced to such an extent, and owing to his emotional outburst in the banquet scene, the other the other minor characters feel suspicious of Macbeth having a role to play in not just Duncan's regicide but also somewhere with Banquo's murder. ठीक है? So setting is basically somewhere in Scotland where the political tension is at its peak. Political tension is at its peak. Characters over here are Lennox and an unnamed Scottish lord. ठीक है? You can use unnamed Scottish lord, where Lennox speaks in a highly sarcastic tone. In other words, he uses biting. You can use this in your answer. He uses biting irony to expose Macbeth's criminality, pretending that Macbeth is kind while actually is exposing him as a violent tyrant. ठीक है? So his speech is laced with dripping sarcasm. Lennox's speech is laced with dripping sarcasm. Now, Lennox recalls that Duncan was murdered only after he paid a visit to Macbeth. The guards were blamed and killed conveniently, uh, justifying Macbeth's anger as pious in his pious rage. Pious is basically religious. In his religious rage, he just killed the guards who were in the fit of intoxication, and Banquo too was murdered and Fleance escaped, making Macbeth appear suspicious. Lennox openly hints at Macbeth's actions are calculated and not incidental or accidental. Like everything had been perfectly planned on the part of Macbeth. That is what Lennox feels, and this is giving us an idea about what the characters have started to consider Macbeth as, that he is indeed a tyrannical ruler and not that of a legitimate one. Then Lord reveals that Macduff has gone to England. Macduff has gone to England to seek help from King Edward. Now, a very important question from your examination perspective could be the character contrast between Macbeth as a ruler versus that of Edward as a ruler. Very high chances of this coming in your examination. So prepare a 5-mark answer on the same. Take care. To seek help from King Edward, Malcolm and Donalbain are in England. Not Donalbain. Malcolm is in England, but Donalbain is in Ireland. ठीक है? He is in Ireland, and hope is rising that they will restore Scotland because Malcolm is the legitimate ruler to the throne, to the Scotland, to the country Scotland. Macbeth's response: Macbeth is angry at Macduff's absence, that is what is added on the part of Lord, and has called him a traitor. This scene ends with a prayer like hope that Scotland will be healed and Macbeth will be overthrown, will be removed. Talking about critical analysis, this scene shows how Scotland is waking up to Macbeth's tyranny. Now, Scotland is waking up, matlab, Scotland ke characters, minor characters are aware of Macbeth's heinous crimes, or at least they are suspicious of Macbeth's heinous crime, where Macbeth is no longer considered as a hero, rather is viewed as a bloody ruler whose hands are crimsoned with the murders of Banquo and Duncan. Lennox's sarcasm is basically a hidden revolt. Rebellion means basically revolt. That is like a silent vidroh. ठीक है? Revolt which is brewing now, a silent revolt which is brewing, and Lennox uses irony and sarcasm to criticize Macbeth safely. Also, being mindful that maybe openly speaking against king can cost his life. He is aware of this fact. It shows how fear in Scotland has perpetuated, like it lingers on under Macbeth's tyrannical rule, where people cannot even speak openly, so they speak indirectly. Talking about Macbeth's rule, now Macbeth's rule is basically considered with suspect and with oppression, that people are feeling oppressed, people are feeling suffocated under Macbeth's tyrannical rule. The atmosphere of Scotland is now full of fear, surveillance. Basically, they feel, the characters feel that every time they are being watched by some or the other spies, hired spies of Macbeth, and then there is a political uproar or instability. Macbeth's kingship is presented as unnatural and illegitimate, like it is not that of rightful, that is illegitimate. It is not considered to be rightful. Rather, Macbeth has cheated. Macbeth has cheated to ascend to power or to the throne of Scotland. That is what is considered. However, the scene ends on a note with that of a hope and the preparation for the climax, that is the war which is impending. ठीक है, Macduff coupled with Malcolm will be marching towards Scotland in order to depose Macbeth from his throne. So it sets up the next phase, next part of the play, where England becomes the center of resistance and Malcolm will emerge as the Scotland's rightful future, and Macbeth's downfall is destined. Begins politically, not just morally as well. Talking about the contrast in the kingship between Macbeth और Malcolm और Edward could be asked, दोनों में से किसी का भी contrast draw करने आ सकता है. It is very important from the examination point of view, where Macbeth is viewed as a tyrant who rules by fear. On the other hand, Malcolm or Edward are considered as healers to the country, where under their rule their country prospers, while on the other hand, under Macbeth's rule, the country feels oppressed and subjugated. This contrast strengthens the theme of good versus evil governance. Governance means basically control. ठीक है? Talking about the character development of the characters here, Lennox is initially loyal, was initially loyal, but now is feeling disillusion, means lost and suspicious at the same time. उसे शक हो रहा है Macbeth के ऊपर. But however, he decides to remain clever and cautious and uses indirect biting sarcasm rather than exposing Macbeth directly. He is mindful of not very explicitly speaking ill about Macbeth. He represents the Scottish nobility, that is novelty, which is shifting the loyalty away from Macbeth. Talking about the unnamed lord, he is basically a voice of patriotism and resistance. He is informed, well informed about the situations in Scotland and politically active, knows about Macduff's mission. He represents hope, although his speech is hopeful that may Macduff uh, may Macduff reach England quickly and come back to Scotland swiftly in order to depose Macbeth. So represents hope and the desire for national restoration, that is the peace in Scotland, restoration of peace back to Scotland. While on the other hand, Macduff, although he is absent from this particular scene, he is not on stage, yet his presence is strongly felt in this particular scene, where he is shown as brave, that is courageous, he is patriotic, यानी वो देश के प्रति बहुत ज्यादा बोलते हैं ना देशभक्त है, and all at the same time Macduff is willing to risk his own life being labeled as a traitor in order to save Scotland. ठीक है? And talking about the main themes of this particular scene, tyranny and oppression is highlighted here. Macbeth's reign, that is rule, becomes a dictatorship of fear. Scotland is described like a nation bleeding under tyrant. Appearance versus reality. Macbeth appears as a king, but in reality is a criminal in crown. And Lennox sarcasm highlights this particular gap. There is a theme of loyalty and betrayal. Macbeth calls Macduff a traitor, but Macbeth is the real traitor to Scotland, which is also irony at the same time. ठीक है? Although he labels Macduff as a traitor, yet he himself is the one who is the biggest traitor to the Scotland. Justice and retribution, the scene hints at the divine and political justice which is upcoming, and Macbeth's crimes are catching up with him. In other words, Macbeth's own crimes and his deeds have started to surface through his actions and disturbed frame of mind. And at the same time, there is a symbol of hope and restoration, where England is symbolizing that healing, that through England's army, they will be able to recover and restore peace and liberty back in Scotland. And Malcolm represents the possibility of order, that is, political, social order, coming back or regaining back to Scotland. Now, what are the key quotations which you definitely should use in your answer? That is Lennox's bitter sarcasm. My former speeches have but hit your thoughts. ठीक है? And then second one is, alas, poor country, almost afraid to know itself. Use this one. Scotland is personified. It weeps, it bleeds. Basically, Scotland under Macbeth's tyrannical rule, it weeps, it cries, it bleeds, and each day is a new gash, is a fresh wound which is added to country's suffering. And then some holy angel fly to the court of England, that is for the restoration of country, and then may soon return to this our suffering country under hand accursed. Okay? Basically, the desire to remove Macbeth's cursed rules. Now, these are some of the lines and phrases which you can use in your answers, so you can take note of this. Act 3, Scene 6 marks the political awakening of Scotland against Macbeth's tyranny. Lennox's sarcasm becomes a safe weapon of resistance in the climate of fear. Macbeth's kingship is presented as unnatural, sustained by suspicion and violence, and Scotland is personified as a bleeding nation, highlighting the cost of illegitimate power. And the scene shifts the conflict from private guilt to public rebellion. It is written as private guilt to public rebellion. ठीक है, private guilt to public rebellion. And Macduff emerges as the moral opposite of Macbeth, patriotic, selfless, and courageous. Character contrast between Macduff and Macbeth. Hope enters the play through England, suggesting restoration and justice. And the language of the wound and healing reiterates the theme of diseased state. These are some of the lines which you can use in your answer. Okay? And coming to the concluding part of the play, Act 3, Scene 6 exposes Macbeth as a tyrant. That is the root of this particular scene, like the core of this particular scene, the heart of this particular scene in the eyes of Scotland, and highlights that restoration of right order is now inevitable. Okay? So basically, restoration of the country is not possible as long as Macbeth will rule. Rather, somebody has to come and grant the country with freedom and liberty. So this was your detailed revision on Act 3, Scene 6. I hope you are liking my content, and if you are, and if you want me to make more such series, then do drop a yes in the comment section below. Have a great time preparing for your examination. Till then, keep smiling, keep studying, take care, bye-bye. I'll see you in my next video.